while I finish my donut. I'll give you a few minutes to log in and listen. Hmm, what in the world? Oh, I'm seeing weird things on the screen, but they're actually here. They just look strange because they're backward. Yes, I have been encouraged to rig up a better background, but I have so many things to do. Now, up there, let's see, top left of my screen, so it's probably the top right of your screen. There's a hole in the wall. I've fixed it on the other side. Now I have to fix it on this side. Hello, Tim. The original red pill, I believe. Uh, no, it's a camel filter. I don't know if you can get it in focus. There's a little camel near the top of the white part. See? Camel filters. Not a joint. Well, anyway, I promised to start doing this every Sunday at 3. I'm not doing it on Blog Talk because I'm sick and tired of their glitches. Plus, there's no customer support on weekends, and I've been told that they're often unavailable over the week during business hours. So, anyway, um, YouTube will do for now. I looked into Spreaker, but I have a free account and it's rather limited. On the other hand, you would not be able to tell that I'm not wearing my dentures if I did this on Spreaker, which is audio only. Okay. The problem of evil. I've posted a link in the chat room for the Blue Letter Bible article about it. But first, I'll give you a brief overview of my idea. Yes, there's evil and the pain and suffering that go with it. This world has plenty of evil. So, where is God in all this? Well, from my point of view, it seems that sure, God could eliminate evil and the pain and suffering that go along with evil. Of course, he'd have to kill all of us because we perpetrate so much evil. You might think about Hitler and Stalin and Chairman Mao and Pol Pot. But actually, even the little things can be classified as evil. Did you say something unkind to another person? Did you rebuke or slap your dog for doing something that irritated you? Did you do something like that to your loved ones or to a stranger? Have you sabotaged someone else at work? Ooh, the Joker. I don't think I'll be seeing that movie. I'm watching chat as well as I can while bloviating. Evil comes in many forms, large and small, but it's all evil, and we all do it. We're all sinners. That's why we need grace and mercy. We can't earn a spot in heaven. And by the way, God does not send anyone to hell. He'll let you go there if that's what you want. Go ahead, walk right through the gates if you don't want to be with God. But it isn't necessarily a place of punishment. It's Sheol in Hebrew or Hades in Greek. Of course, I'm pronouncing both words as an English speaker and not the way they're pronounced in the original languages. Achilles went to Hades because all the Greeks went there when they died. He wasn't being punished, but he was bored out of his mind. He said he'd rather be a dirt farmer than a king in hell. He'd rather be alive again. And farmers, by the way, were considered the lowest class in ancient Greece, even though they depended upon farmers for their food. Now, we kind of treat farmers that way now. Real farmers, not the factory farms that focus more on the quantity of production rather than the quality of what they produce. But that's another story. Evil is everywhere, big and small. It's all the same to God. It's all wrong. And we don't deserve heaven. That's why we need grace and mercy. Well, let's see what the Blue Letter Bible Society says. Number one, we live in a fallen world. The Bible recognizes that evil does exist. We live in a world that has fallen into sin. Now, from my point of view, sin is not something you do, it's a condition. In the same way, the flu is not something that you do, it's a condition. It's still bad. We didn't eat the apple, but by eating the apple, which by the way I believe was really a pomegranate, uh, we inherited the condition of sin, and therefore we do commit bad things, evil, if you will. Number two, God is not responsible for evil. Evil came as a result from the choice of humanity, not God. By giving humans choice, there was the possibility to choose evil. Now, if God is omniscient, you might say he should have known what would happen if he gave humans freedom of choice. Well, let's look at the story of David, and I forget exactly where it is in the Bible. It's either Second Samuel or First Kings. Oh, it's in both. Pardon me. I had a flash of memory, but in the story, um, David is hiding in a pagan city that he has rescued from the Philistines. It's a walled city. And he's worried because he heard that um, King Saul, who wanted to kill David, had learned where he was and was coming to get him. So David asked God, uh, will Saul come and to get me? I'm paraphrasing. And God said yes. And he asked, will the people of the city give me to Saul? In other words, Saul would besiege the city until They kicked David out so Saul could kill him. And David asked twice, and God said yes both times. So what did David do? He and his men left the city. So Saul learned that David had left, and he turned around and went back to Jerusalem. Two things that God knew in advance: that Saul would besiege the city and that they would give David to them, never happened. Why? Because David had freedom of choice and he chose to leave. So God knew that people might disobey. They might eat the forbidden fruit, whatever that was. But it didn't have to happen. And in Jewish tradition, Adam was first married to Lilith, and she ate the fruit, and Adam disowned her. She was kicked out, turned into an evil demon. Now, this is from John Milton. When Adam learned that Eve had eaten the fruit, he willingly ate it as well, so that he could still be with her, because he'd rather be with Eve than be in Eden without her. He gave up paradise willingly, according to John Milton. Of course, that's not in the Bible, but that's what Milton thought. Now, let's see. God can number 4 here. Oh, I skipped number 3. Here we go. God allows evil to exist by his permission. Although we do not understand why he permits evil in every instance, evil cannot overrule. That doesn't make sense. Something's missing. Anyway, God allows it. Oh, evil can't overrule God, I guess. Now, number 4. Yeah, God allows evil. He'd have to kill us all to get rid of it. Number 4, God can overrule evil for good. We find that God overrules wickedness for the good, and it talks about Joseph, whose brothers sold him into slavery. And then Joseph became a ruler over all Egypt and saved his brothers from the famine. Number 5, evil is not logical. I disagree with this, but the website says evil by definition is not logical. It is random. Therefore, we should not expect it to operate in a righteous way. Well, yeah, evil's kind of the opposite of righteousness. Oh, hello, Sleepy Dave. Sleepy Dave is on Spreaker, and I believe Red Pill is as well. The real Red Pill or the original Red Pill. Anyway, evil is often quite rational and logical, but misguided. You see, the Nazis were quite rational and quite logical. The thing is, their premises were wrong. When they decided to cleanse the Aryan race by killing anybody who wasn't a good Aryan, that included Jews, of course, but also um, Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, Masons, Catholics, eventually Catholics, although there's good evidence that the Pope kind of collaborated with the Nazis in some ways. In fact, there's a story that the Pope baptized a group of Jewish children and told the Nazis they couldn't take these good Catholics to the death camps. And the parents of those children were angry because they were no longer good Jews, that their souls were more important than their lives. And there are many stories of Catholic churches saving Jews, but there's also stories of collaboration. So I guess in an organization that large, there are people with differing views and who act differently. Anyway, the Nazis got their ideas about eugenics or cleansing the race from America, the United States, from the eugenics movement that kind of came out of uh, theosophy, a spiritualist movement, uh, and eventually morphed into Planned Parenthood. They got the idea from us, but they actually took it to the extreme. In the United States, we had many people who had darker skin, women in particular, being sterilized without their knowledge and against their will. Um, Babies who weren't perfect being, quote, mercifully euthanized, in other words, murdered shortly after birth. And now we are able to abort them before they are even born. But that's another story. Now, number 6. When people break God's laws, it will have consequences. I'll pop the link into chat again for people who came in later. Yeah. Galatians 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for you reap whatever you sow. In other words, what goes out comes back. We cannot break the law of God without suffering the consequences. It doesn't give an example, but there are plenty of them, mostly in the Old Testament. For example, when David sinned with Bathsheba, um, the child that they produced died as an infant. Now you might think it's wrong for God to kill an innocent baby to punish David, but that isn't how the ancient Israelites thought of it. That baby represented David's legacy, his progeny, his line, who might someday become king after him. And he lost that because he sinned. However, they went on to have another child named Solomon, who did become king after David. And a lot of bad things happened under Solomon. You don't often hear about that because he was so wise and so forth, but well, bad things happened too. His own sons rebelled against him. His own sons murdered each other. All kinds of bad stuff. Well, uh, that's because Solomon sinned. And apparently he wasn't as wise as he thought he was. He failed to punish a son who had gravely sinned against one of his daughters. And that was the beginning of the rebellion, eventually against Solomon himself. All right, number 7. God is involved in solving the problem of evil. God is directly involved in the problem of evil. Jesus, God's Son, came to die to deal with the problem of evil. I don't necessarily agree with that, but let's keep reading. He died on Calvary's cross to free humanity from pain and suffering, sin and death. Someday there will be a world when? I'm used to people talking about a time where, which is also wrong, but a world when is doubly wrong. When is time, place is where. A world where all these things will be non existent. Scripture says, Luke chapter 18, verses 7 and 8, and will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Now, I disagree for a couple reasons. One is we don't want justice. We all deserve death, the second death of the soul. All have sinned and fallen short. Our righteousness is as filthy rags compared to the glory of God. We don't want justice, we want grace and mercy. Or as Jesus once said, when the woman in the street was accused of, uh, the word just went, well, cheating on her husband, I guess. There's a word for that. Anyway, they were going to stone her. That was what they did with women who cheated on their husbands. Oh, hi, Oswald. Glad you made it. If you can't stick around, it'll always be archived for later listening. Okay, so here's this woman about to be stoned to death, and they see Jesus, so they ask him, well, what? Should we stone her to death, or shouldn't we? And Jesus says, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And they all walked away. They knew that not one of them, no matter how righteous or good or whatever, was without sin. Number 8, there is an age to come when evil will be done away with. Evil will not win in the end. And in Revelation chapter 21, verses 4 and 5, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Okay, now most of us don't want to wait for the next world, for a new heavens and a new earth. So we do what we can to make this world a better place. We resist evil. We strive to be good and to do good, not to earn a place in heaven. That's impossible. We could never earn it. We strive to do good and to be good because we are so grateful for this gift that God has given us. And we want to demonstrate our thankfulness. Now, the summary from the web page. The Bible has a number of things to say about the problem of evil. We do live in a fallen world where evil exists. However, evil did not come about left out by, I'm inserting it, God's design. He is not responsible for it. Evil only exists by his permission. Now that might seem contradictory. He didn't plan evil, but he permits it. The Bible says that God is able to overrule evil for good. It must be understood that evil does not work in a logical or rational way. It touches everyone, both good and bad. A person cannot commit evil acts without paying some penalty. Breaking God's law has its consequences. God is involved in solving the problem of evil. He sent his Son to die on Calvary's cross. There will come a day when evil will no longer exist. Well, actually, we can avoid the ultimate penalty, which is the second death of the soul, which means going to the, I guess you could call it hell. You don't have to go there, no matter how bad you are. And this is something my husband, Philip K. Dick, finally realized. Even Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot or Chairman Mao could actually find a place in heaven because, from God's point of view, all sins are equally evil. But they won't. God won't send them to hell, but they choose to go there. They don't want to be with God. They don't want to follow the rules. You see, in heaven, you obey God. You no longer have the same freedom of choice. Oh, you might, like the rebellious angels, decide to disobey God, but when they did that, they got kicked out of heaven and sent to the earth, and some were sent to hell. But we are not sent to hell. It wasn't made for us, it was made for the rebellious angels. And angel is such an inadequate term for the sons of God, the little g gods. But that's what we call them. You're allowed to go to hell if you don't want to be with God, but God won't force you to go there if you want to be with Him. And we use pronouns like he and him, even though God is probably neither male nor female, or perhaps both male and female. It's just a matter of convenience. And many ancient people misinterpreted that to conclude that women were lower on the totem pole than men. Thank you, Oswald. God is transgender. Actually, I think he's bigender. He's everything. If God is everywhere and all powerful and all knowing, he is everything. That's scary. We live inside God, and the earth is a piece of God, a piece of heaven, if you will. Do angels dream of ecclesiastic sheep? Yeah, well, unfortunately, that brings me to the realization that at least now the Bible doesn't say the lion shall lie down with the lamb. It says the wolf will lie down with the lamb. And yet we have iconography, at least as far back as the Middle Ages, of a lion lying down with a lamb. And I've always thought that the Bible said the lion shall lie down with the lamb, but I can't find it anywhere. I'll keep looking though. Maybe it's in Luke. Let's see. Luke, lion, lamb. There's all kinds of videos. I can't play you a video, and I'm not going to buy something on Amazon. All right, let's see. Gospel Uh, lambs in the Gospel of Luke. I'll leave out lion and see if I find something. Luke 15:3-7. No, there's no lions in that. It's the parable of the lost sheep. Okay. Luke and the Lamb of God. Never mind. Crichton. Uh, okay, it's hard for me to talk and type at the same time. All right. Evil is a big problem, and it's one of the accusations that atheists hurl at believers. I'm smoking too much again. Shame on me. Coffee helps. Well, they are so angry with God. It makes me wonder why they're so angry at someone who doesn't exist. They're atheists. They don't believe in God. So why are they so angry with God who doesn't exist? Yeah. Another one is, okay, we're all atheists when it comes to Zeus and Apollo and Minerva and all those other pagan gods. They've just added one more to the list. Well, I beg to differ. Zeus and Athena and Minerva and Apollo and all of those gods do exist, but they aren't God. Let's see. I think it's Deuteronomy 32. I'll get the English Standard Version, ESV. Let's see. Oh, it's going to take forever to load. Slow internet. Here we go. Yeah. Starting, let's just go through the whole thing. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak, and let the earth hear the words of my mouth. May my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, like gentle rain upon the tender grass, and like showers upon the herb. For I will proclaim the name of the Lord, ascribe greatness to our God. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. They have dealt corruptly with him. They are no longer his children because they are blemished. They are a crooked and twisted generation. This is after the Tower of Babel when people thought they'd build a tower to reach into heaven and make a name for themselves, and God scattered the people and gave them different languages so they couldn't understand each other. Okay, verse 6. Do you thus repay the Lord, you foolish and senseless people? Is not he your Father who created you, who made you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. And I'll stop there. Many translations say sons of Israel. which is what the Masoretic text says. But we're talking something like 700 AD for the Masoretic text, our oldest copies of it. The sons of God is what it says in the Septuagint, the translation of the Old Testament made by 70 Jewish scholars in Egypt around 300 BC, more or less, thereabouts. And although in most cases we like to follow the Masoretic text, which is the conventional Hebrew text rather than the Greek translation, it makes sense because right after the Tower of Babel, there was no Jacob, there was no Israel. Israel was the name that God gave to Jacob after Jacob spent all night wrestling with the angel of the Lord. Well, and this is an argument that you'll find pagans making. God told us that we were under the authority of these little gods. Yeah, he did, but you were not supposed to worship them. Sure, Zeus and Apollo and Minerva and Athena are powerful, but they are not God and you don't worship them. And any righteous angel of God will not allow you to worship him or her. Now, there probably are um, female angels as well as male, but the Hebrew doesn't have a word for a female angel. They're all identified with male nouns and pronouns, masculine. But you see, I conclude therefore that all these little g gods do exist. I'm not an atheist when it comes to their existence. I simply don't worship them any more than I worship the raccoons that get into my trash or the thunder that comes during a storm or the devil wind that's rocking our mountains right now and putting us in great danger of wildfire. Now, I'm going to have to take a minute to recycle some coffee, but I promise I'll be back in a flash. Okay, I'm back. Yay. Now, when God allotted the nations to these little g gods, he said, don't worship them. But they began. Oh, Dave has coffee too. Yes, he has coffee in the morning almost every day on Spreaker. Anyway, so these little g gods got kind of uppity and started demanding worship and sacrifice. And so we have like Baal or Baal demanding that people pass their children through the fire. In other words, burn their babies to death in worship of these yich, evil, little g deities. And even some of the Israelites started doing the same thing. You see, these pagans had really fun parties. Who wouldn't want to go to a fun party? Well, there's a song, I guess it's an old song now. Mama told me not to come. Don't go to that party. It's one reason why I'm in Lioness, part of Lions International. We have parties where nobody gets arrested. Nobody even gets drunk. Anyway, sorry, my throat's not cooperating. So, we are not supposed to worship them. They're just caretakers because God's had it with us. Well, then in the New Testament, when Jesus is out in the desert and Satan says, I'll give you the whole world. All you have to do is bow down and worship me. What does Jesus say? Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Satan is actually asking God himself to bow down and worship him. That's hubris, the Greek word for sinful pride, and it's the pride that goeth before a fall. Now, Satan in the Old Testament is not the name of a particular person. It's a title, a job description, the accuser, sort of a prosecuting attorney, the deity that accuses Job before God and says, hey, I'll bet Job isn't really um, faithful. He doesn't really worship you. He just likes you because he's wealthy and prosperous and all that. And he has all these children and flocks and servants and stuff. That's a job description. It's the Satan. And ancient Hebrew, like modern English, does not put the before a name. I am not the Tessa. My brother is not the Steve. My sister is not the Georgia. So when it says the Satan, it's not the name of the person, it's a job title. The accuser, the prosecuting attorney. And so in the New Testament, suddenly Satan is a person. I don't know what happened in between, but he has the nerve, the absolute nerve to demand that God worship him, and I'll give you the world. Well, the world does belong to God. When we speak of the God of this world, which is found somewhere in the New Testament, we usually think of Satan, the devil. Uh, well, he claims to be the God of this world, and apparently he could give the world to God, so he has some claim upon it. But in the end, this world belongs to God, and God promises to replace it with a new heavens and a new earth. Now, we don't want to wait for that, do we? Some people just live for the return of the king. Yes, I watched The Lord of the Rings, all 3 or 4 movies, I forget how many. Um, it is a sort of allegory. Some people just live for the second coming of Christ and the war and the rapture and all that. We're not supposed to do that. No man knows the hour or the day, not even the Son, but only the Father, which kind of indicates that Jesus isn't quite on a level with the Father. The Son doesn't know everything. But as I demonstrated, if God is omniscient, he screwed up when David was hiding in that city because Saul didn't attack the city and the people didn't turn David over to Saul, even though God said he would. Why? Because David chose to leave the city. He and his men had to sneak out in the middle of the night because the grateful people of the city that they had rescued from the Philistines didn't want them to leave. But he did choose to leave. That's interesting. Once, Sleepy Dave says, once Adam fell, that gave Satan permission to enter the world. Well, Satan was already in Eden tempting Eve. The Satan, by the way. That wasn't the serpent's name. Yes, but in the New Testament, he's called Satan. And he had the authority because the world is Satan's kingdom. But you see, Satan, like the others, is simply a placeholder in the place of God, like the sons of God in Deuteronomy 32. God allotted this world to Satan, but he's just a temporary. What was the word they used in the Return of the King? A steward. The line was something like, it is not given to you to oppose the return of the king, steward. I love The Lord of the Rings. I'll have to watch it again. Yes, I'm not sure it was Jesus, but Satan is called the God of this world, little g God, in the New Testament. But remember, he's not God. Yeah, Jesus said his kingdom is not of this world. That's because he's making a new heavens and a new earth. God doesn't want to rule a fallen world. But this whole world is temporary. And if you listen to the current hysteria, we're all going to die from global warming, which I think is hogwash. We are in an ice age. We want it to get warmer. The polar bears are not drowning. Their population has increased more than 5 times in just 10 years because polar bear hunting was banned and they aren't getting shot. Yes, some islands will sink, but we have boats. We don't have to sit there and drown. And those people who live on those islands have hundreds of years of tradition of getting in their boats and moving when their island starts to sink, because it always happens. And the world was much warmer in the medieval warm period, which was followed by the Little Ice Age, in which millions of people starved to death because all the crops in Europe failed because it snowed. They even had at least one year with no summer because of a volcano. Well, anyway, we are not supposed to pray for the end of the world to come and come quickly. Oh, yeah, they keep saying this or that island is going to sink, the Maldives or some other island. Islands sink all the time, and new islands rise up primarily from volcanic activity, but sometimes from earthquakes under the ocean. Ah, and the Ring of Fire, that is the Pacific Rim, from California to China, is on fire. Oh, Gerard read a James Michener book. I haven't read that. Creatures of the Kingdom, Stories of Animals and Nature. Ah, he does describe the formation of islands. Good. Oh, it's a collection. Excellent. Okay, let's see. I can't type and talk at the same time. So here we go. There. Ah, Hawaii. Hawaii has a brand new island now, but it seems to be kind of fizzling or maybe even sinking. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah, Satan. Now, the book of Job, some people say that it's the oldest book in the Bible, but the manuscript evidence, according to experts, suggests that it isn't older than the five books of Moses. It's rather recent, actually. However, the story that it tells is ancient. Job isn't even a Hebrew. He's not a descendant of Abraham. He's a pagan, a heathen, a foreigner. But why do you think God punishes Job by killing his sons and their wives? And Job's wives, by the way. Well, if you read carefully, Job is praying every day while his sons and their families are eating dinner. Apparently, his sons and their wives are not praying, they are not worshiping God. So Job is kind of praying for them. And remember, as I said earlier in this podcast, that doesn't mean they went to hell. God doesn't send anyone to hell, but if that's where you want to go, if you don't want to be with God, He'll allow you to go there. And by the way, we don't have people screaming and pleading to be let out of hell. They don't want to be with God. That's why they went there. And just like this world here, yeah, it's kind of bad, but you know, at least I have freedom of choice and I don't have to do what big bad God says. We're kind of like children. disobeying our parents. Well, in my case, I kind of had to disobey Mom because she was nuts. But let's not go there. I remember from a very early age believing in God, even though I had little or no religious upbringing. When I was 6 years old and Granny gave me a Bible, I started reading it. It was a wonderful gift. The problem is, it was the New World Translation, and everybody else had the King James. So when I went to Sunday school with my brother and I recited John 3:16, for God so loved the world, and it was different, they thought I was stupid. And I tried and tried to get the attention of the Sunday school teacher to ask him why my Bible was different, but he wouldn't listen to me. So when I went home, I asked Mom, and she just said, "Oh, Granny gave you a weird translation." And I keep forgetting, but the New World Translation comes from, let's see, Google is my friend. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's the Jehovah's Witness Bible. Actually, no, Granny was a Presbyterian. She probably got the Bible, the New World Bible, for free. Granny didn't spend money if she didn't have to. There, I typed it and said it. She wasn't exactly a skinflint, but she was very, what do you call, well, budget conscious. And I can't complain too much because when Granny died, she left me enough money for a down payment on a house. And I'm just a granddaughter. Frugal. Okay, thrifty is the word I was looking for. Granny was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, the Douay Bible, eh? Michael, in all Greek letters. And I managed to read it. I always have trouble with the E that looks like an N. Michael has the Douay Bible. I should know what that is, but I always forget, so I'm going to have to look it up. It's one of those older translations. Douay Rhymes Bible. Oh, it was translated from the Latin Vulgate in Rhymes, France. Well, the New Testament version. The New Testament portion was translated in Rhymes. Okay, so wow. And Gerard got the 1611 King James Version. I have looked at a Gutenberg Bible at the Huntington Library, but they don't let you touch it. So you can't turn the pages. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Yes, it is falling apart. But someone should, like photograph it or something so we can spend hundreds of dollars on a modern copy. Ah, yeah. Moses wasn't the only one who complained to God. Job complained to God, and God said, "Huh, where were you when I laid the foundations of the world?" And he talks about Orion and the Pleiades. Surely you know. In other words, shut up, I'm God and you aren't. Yeah, Moses complained too. Well, gee, there's many different translations. I like the King James for the poetry of the language, but I've been using the English Standard Version, the ESV, because it's very recent and it has corrected some errors that pop up in all translations. I happen to be prejudiced against the Latin Vulgate because it's Catholic, but more than that, it's um, well, Latin just doesn't have the power of other ancient languages. I really don't have anything against Catholic people, although I don't like the Pope. At least he isn't a former Nazi like the previous one. Oh, thank God for Erasmus. That's another thing. You know that thing in Luke about snakes and poisons and stuff? Erasmus added that. They asked him to. So those fools who play with deadly snakes and drink poisons are following Erasmus, not Luke. Ah, well, Latin, I studied a little bit of Latin in high school and a little touch of Koine Greek, but oh, sorry, Gerard, I have to decide whether to. For some reason, YouTube thinks there's something. Oh, magna cum laude. They thought that the middle word was a bad word. Silly YouTube. I didn't get very deeply into Greek. My older and smarter brother Steve is really studying Greek now. But I can recognize the Greek alphabet and a few Greek words. Yeah, Philip K. Dick did describe all kinds of stuff. He was long before his exegesis. He was delving into religion, theology, etc. Well, you see, YouTube is they're they have this little computer program that looks for bad words in your posts. It doesn't know that magna cum laude is not bad. Chrislam, oh, that's a weird hybrid of Christianity and Islam, parts popular in parts of West Africa. Well, you know the in standard Islam they consider Jesus a prophet, but not God, not divine. But anyway, now if they it depends upon the interpretation of the Quran, but Jews and Christians are people of the book. And in a jihad, they're allowed to kill Christians and Jews. But there are rules. They can't just sneak up behind you or walk up and set off a bomb. They're supposed to defeat you in face to face combat and leave the women and children alone. But of course, these terrorists in the Middle East don't follow those rules. Oh yeah, they call Jesus Isa. Well, that kind of makes sense. It's more like Yesu in Latin. In Hebrew, it's of course Yeshua, which is we same name as Joshua. Yeshua. Well, I've read parts of the Quran, but you know, you go into a cave and this spirit says, "I'm God." Write down what I say. It kind of, well, actually, Muhammad was illiterate, so he had scribes writing it down for him later. I kind of wonder, though, for one thing, um, believing Jews never say the name of God. And here's uh, observant Jews, that's the word, observant. Here's Muhammad saying there's one God and his name is Allah. And they're always saying his name. That's totally wrong. In most traditions going down to ancient times, if you know someone's true name, you have power over that person. The early Christians, for example, had secret Christian names that were not the same as the names they used in public, the names they were known by. That's why exorcists demand to know the name of the demon. The name gives you power. So observant Jews and even pagans don't say the name of God. God isn't his name. Even Yahweh or Jehovah is not his name. My feral cat is pounding at the door. I have to placate her with treats. I think she'll have to wait a bit. It's complicated. The new cat has to be put in kitty jail because she hasn't been spayed and she isn't going outside till she is. Yes, kitties. Um, well, and then the feral cat won't come in. She'll just demand that I go out there and give her food or treats or whatever. By the way, Tora, the new cat, the rescue that I didn't really want, but here she is. She loves chicken livers. She swiped them right off my plate and ate them. Yeah, Jews say Hashem, which means the name, or Adonai, which means Lord. I find it fascinating, by the way, that Hashem, the name, is almost backwards for Shema, which means the Lord is one. Hashem, Shema. I would adopt the feral cat, but she won't let herself be adopted. I call her Sweetie. That comes from Doctor Who, of course. Hello, Sweetie. If you're not a Doctor Who fan, it'll go right over your head. but that's okay. She's sweetie. I used to call her mommy, but she never forgave me for giving away her babies. So now she's sweetie. Okay, I definitely have to take care of the cat, so give me a couple of minutes. Come here, Tora, kitty cat. You know the drill. Come on. It's kitty cat jail for you, okay? Yeah, that's a good kitty. She hasn't learned yet that she can resist. All right. Hello, sweetie. Did you eat your treat? Kitty, kitty. All right. Let's put this away quick. And I think I'm back. Here we go. Life is easier with Tora in kitty cat jail anyway. And by the way, she came with that name. Tora is Japanese for little tiger. And I remember that movie, Tora, 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 which I saw in the theater back in the 70s. Once a week, I used to take my young son to the Fox Theater in Fullerton, and we would watch whatever was playing. And one time it was Tora, Tora, Tora. Another time it was a dog of a movie. Literally, it was called Dogs. And in one particular scene when dogs were killing people, uh, we went out to the lobby. I keep losing words. We went out to the lobby because we couldn't take it. And we were not alone. Grown men were out there and women. It's all right. Anyway, worse than Cujo. It was based on a true story in which these dogs in a small town in Northern California killed a couple people. But in the movie, packs of dogs were roaming the streets. Pet dogs were killing their owners. It was blood and gore everywhere. Cujo was a story of one St. Bernard who got rabies. This was a story of packs of dogs. Oh, my glass of water's empty. Hang on. Now, when Walter Bosley does YouTube, which starts probably around 5 o'clock, maybe 4:30, maybe 5:30, uh, and you should go to the Walter Bosley channel and sign up, subscribe, and watch his videos. Walter always has some kind of energy drink, except last Sunday when he had a bottle of water. I think it was flavored water. Anyway, uh, so you didn't like Cujo or Tommy Knockers. I find Stephen King's novels unreadable. I don't believe that English is his first language. Or, as some people might say, Stephen King doesn't have a first language. He abuses the English language terribly. Anyway, I like some of the movies. like ah, I can't think of the name, where they're in that inn and they're snowed in. Somebody help me. Jack Nicholson, and in the end you see his head sticking out of the snow. And in one scene he's breaking down the door with an axe and he says, "Here's Johnny." The Shining. Thank you, Strontium. The Stand. Oh, what I really liked was totally different genre, really. Stand By Me. I liked that movie so much. I might even read the story that it's based on. And it forced me to relearn the theme song from Have Gun Will Travel because the boys were singing it as they walked along the railroad tracks. He wrote a Dark Tower prequel, huh? Isn't the Dark Tower that one that might or might not have been written by C.S. Lewis? There's some dispute about its authorship. Well, anyway, the worst thing about Stephen King is I don't want to read 2 or 3 chapters about a guy getting up in the morning, shaving, getting dressed, eating breakfast, work, the traffic along the way, detailed description of the door to the office and his desk and what's on it, and people saying hello to him. Those are all sins of creative writing that we're taught not to commit. Paralandra, let's see, P-E-R, Paralandra. Gerard needed the title of Paralandra, one of C.S. Lewis's works. Yes, the Dark Tower is supposedly part of the Paralandra trilogy. But there's quite a controversy about whether he actually wrote it. Yeah, Michael agrees with me. A lot of filler to get to a plot and couldn't follow who was who. I forget which book it was even, but I put it down in disgust. Now there are some interviews with I've forgotten the name, but the literary executor of C.S. Lewis's estate. But I haven't heard him saying anything about the Dark Tower. But many people insist that C.S. Lewis did not write that. I kind of waffle. I think maybe it was put together from notes that C.S. Lewis made, but that he never would have turned it into a book and published it. Well, you see, to keep the literary state alive, you kind of have to have a new book once in a while. And as with the estate of Philip K. Dick, the pickings are getting slim. They're especially slim in the case of Philip K. Dick because the literary agent failed to renew a number of copyrights. So many of his works are in public domain and nobody gets paid for them. I'm tempted to say I told you so. His daughters would have nothing to do with me when it was time to renew the copyrights. I was just a crazy old ex wife who didn't know anything. Well, excuse me, I knew a lot more than they did, and I would have caught the omission of his early stories and even some of the novels. Oh, Canticle for Leibowitz. Is that Fritz Leiber? I think Phil used to talk about it. Now, I'm not sure which book or story, novel, I'm pretty sure, or who wrote it, but in one novel, monk in the Middle Ages has his rosary beads made of penicillin so that he can survive the plague. And he's always doing penance for the sin of having this cure and not sharing it. Miller. Okay, let's see. Canticle for Google is my friend. I always forget Miller's first name. Walter M. Miller Jr. Okay. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I watched part one of the Hobbit trilogy, the movies. My brother took me to the theater, and we were so disappointed. It goes like this: walk, walk, hide, walk, walk, hide, walk, walk, hide. Look, there's a dragon. The end. So, of course, sorry, my eyes are itchy, itchy, itchy. We never wasted our money on part two or part three. Now, I'm not all that knowledgeable about science fiction in general. It was not my thing when I was growing up. I read the Foundation trilogy of Isaac Asimov because the librarian at my school told me to. But other than that, I had read one oh, I had read 2001, of course, Arthur C. Clarke. But I had been spending the weekend at a mountain cabin, and the only book to read was an old Ace double. One side was The Mind Monsters, and I wasn't impressed by it, but I read it because there was nothing else to read. Then I flipped the book over and read this novel called The Unteleported Man. It was Philip K. Dick, but I didn't remember the author's name. I thought it was pretty good, but I wasn't into science fiction, so I didn't even try to remember the authors' names. So, um, on another occasion, when I was at summer school, which was a joke, they just left me alone with a typewriter to learn typing, with a self pacing course book and a bunch of books. That was sort of a tiny library. I read this collection called Science Fiction Terror Tales, and one of the stories in it was Roog by Philip K. Dick. Well, when I found out that Phil wrote Roog, I went around all day saying, "You wrote Roog? Wow!" Because that was an excellent story told from the dog's point of view about how these evil alien garbage men were stealing the trash from his family. Oh, Ray Bradbury was an awesome person, I'm told. I never knew him, although I did hear him give a speech once when I attended the Nebula Awards ceremony. Phil was afraid to go because he heard that Robert Heinlein wanted to see him, and Phil was afraid of Heinlein. Turned out there was no basis in reality for that fear, but anyway, Ray Bradbury gave a speech and read this horrible long poem he had written about Moby Dick. And I didn't know at the time that Ray Bradbury had written the script, the screenplay for the movie Moby Dick. But I recently came upon a copy of Ray Bradbury's memoir, uh, Green Shadows, White Whale, about his experience going to Ireland and writing the script, the screenplay. Anyway, Robert Heinlein just wanted Phil to sign some copies of his books because he was a big fan. And he was not nearly as right wing as people wanted to make out. Heinlein was actually, secretly perhaps, but he was actually quite liberal. Okay, who was it? Oh, Ray Bradbury was a procrastinator, or Anthony Burgess? A Clockwork Orange. Yeah. Anyway, when you leave here, go to the Walter Bosley channel. Um I'll put that in the uh, chat so that you can find it. Walter, and then Bosley is Bosley. Don't let me light another cigarette. I've been smoking too much. Oh, Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide. I read two of them, and I have the one that's Thanks for All the Fish, but I haven't got the third one, and I don't want to read them out of order. Walter Bosley does research into all sorts of things, most recently, the esoteric Napoleon. But I first got interested in his work through a podcast in which he discussed The Empire of the Wheel. It's a trilogy of books about weird things, and at least the first one focuses on the Inland Empire, Riverside and San Bernardino counties in Southern California. First, San Bernardino seceded from Los Angeles because they felt they were being taken advantage of, and they were. Then Riverside broke off from San Bernardino because the people of Riverside didn't like all the drunken carousing in San Bernardino. Later, Orange County broke off from Los Angeles because they felt they were being taken advantage of. And yes, you still find the highest taxes in Los Angeles County because they take advantage of people. Apparently, Napoleon had an esoteric side, and he might have switched places with his brother at the end so that his brother went into exile and Napoleon Bonaparte, Bosley speculates, he isn't certain, but Napoleon might have come to the United States while his brother served out his term in exile in his place. And it's interesting. Walter has also written about the aero clubs of Northern California. Actually, before the Civil War, apparently they had flying machines that were not balloons and not airplanes, but something perhaps involving anti gravity up in Sonora in Northern California. Wish I could afford to buy all his books, but he graciously gave me a couple of them signed by the author. So, of course, I had to give him copies of my books signed by the author. You can find my books all over the place, but the place that pays me the most is actually Amazon, not Barnes and Noble or any other website or even bookstore. They are, let's see, I'm currently working on the X in Exegesis, but I have issued a very short preview edition on Amazon Kindle in case you want to get a taste of it for 99 cents. Or if you're an Amazon Prime member, it's free. And I do allow sharing if you want to read it yourself and lend it to a friend. But it's very short. The manuscript was 10 pages or so, so on the Kindle it might be 20 pages. It's a very academic book, quite different from my previous work. I have a novel that I'm rather proud of called The Darkening of the Light. It's very surrealistic. It involves an invasion by alien slugs. Don't ask, just read it. And let's see, Conversations with Philip K. Dick is available in paperback and Kindle. And then there's Philip K. Dick, Remembering Firebright. And a book I have to edit because my older and smarter brother corrected some of the errors in it. Things I remembered but not quite right. I conflated two memories into one, or I forgot about one of our neighbors, forgot he even existed. But he had the house on the corner and I had someone else at the corner house. But they're minor things. Anyway, it's called Tessa B. Dick, My Life on the Edge of Reality. Oh, there's a brain slug party on Futurama. I wonder if they read my book. The alien slugs plant their seeds in people's brains, in my book. They're little eggs. I'll bet they read my book. Didn't give me credit. Oh well, that's neither here nor there. What else do I have? I have two books under my pen name, which is, of course, my maiden name, except I use the initials LA, and my last name, Busby. And I have, let's see, Bad Moon Rising, and In the Woodpile. I used my maiden name primarily to please Dad, who kind of wondered why I didn't use his last name in as my author's name. Bad Moon Rising is a juvenile novel about werewolves, and it very gently treats the idea of pedophilia. And In the Woodpile is an imaginary journey based on a very loose translation of my family's history. Let's see. What other books do I have? Oh, Fallen Angels. It needs some editing, but it's basically a loose interpretation of uh, the origins of alien visitations to this world. The fallen angels who, in Genesis 6, took human wives. Except I haven't gotten to that part yet. It's book one of a trilogy, and I just haven't found the time and energy to write book two because I keep having to stop and earn money. I can barely pay the bills, but don't worry about that right now. I have a GoFundMe, and I think my description on my channel has a link to it. If not, it has a PayPal link. You don't have to actually have PayPal to use it. And if you message me privately, I can probably, yeah, I can actually give you an address right now, my mailing address, because it's a P.O. box. And even if you just want to write, you don't have to send me money. But at this point, I actually have copies of my own books. The most recent one is Philip K. Dick. Oh, no, it starts out Blade Runner creator Philip K. It's primarily a view of the two movies and the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but it focuses on the many problems with the new movie, Blade Runner 2049. Oh, I had to suffer through it 3 times in order to write the book. There is a good movie in there somewhere, but you have to dig it out. And I don't blame the director, Denis Villeneuve, the French Canadian director. He is an artiste. That's what he does. But he was the wrong director for this movie, so I blame what's his name for choosing this director. I've blanked on the director's name. Um, who directed Blade Runner, the first one, in 1982? Um, Not Kubrick, not Spielberg, the other guy. Ridley Scott. Yeah, I blame him entirely for the fact that I had to suffer through 2 hours of dusky orange backgrounds with an occasional dark blue interior where I couldn't even see what the people were doing. 2 hours of that before anything actually happened. And when things did happen, they didn't make sense. I was constantly yelling, continuity! The biggest one is when um, Love, Love, the bad android, the really evil, vicious one, goes to the police station to use their computer to find Officer K, to track him. After they've already established that the police cannot track Officer K, but she can because he's carrying a little gadget in his pocket that she to track him. So she didn't need to go to the police station. She didn't need their computer, but they needed to have a grisly murder scene. The sequel wasn't necessary, but somebody wanted it. Well, anyway, um, about 2 hours in, they finally bring in Harrison Ford, the original Blade Runner, Rick Deckard. Too little, too late. But the third hour of the movie is pretty good. Of course, a half hour. It's actually 3.5 hours, but the last half hour is the closing credits. Now, that's what Denis Villeneuve does. He's an artiste. But people don't see Blade Runner for the artistry. They just don't. Gorgeous landscapes, very expensive sets, and a lot of CGI, computer graphics images. I mean, it was gorgeous, but that just doesn't fit the Blade Runner franchise, if you will. So, anyway, that's my rant for the evening. Well, I'm estimating, but I think the closing credits were close to half an hour. I haven't checked it recently, but that's my recollection. Well, anyway, I'm going to sign off just in case Walter Bosley is on time. Please go to the Walter Bosley channel. He'll be coming on around 5 o'clock. He isn't punctual, usually, but he tries to get on by 5 o'clock, and he has been known to start at 4:30. Gerard watched a total of 5 minutes of the movie, so you saw the opening credits and turned it off, huh? Well, okay. There are some good things about the Blade Runner sequel, and I think that a good film editor could make something out of it. Might not stretch to a full length feature, but I think a good 45 minutes would, and depending upon what they have in the outtakes, the things that didn't get into the final film, they might even make it an hour to an hour and a quarter of a very good movie. But it needs a good editor. And it needs a better soundtrack. I think it was Vangelis who composed the soundtrack. It's good music, but it's way out of sync with what's happening in the film. When something exciting happens, the music doesn't get exciting. When something is ominous, instead of the whoa, whoa, ominous music, you get, oh my God, exciting. It's way out of sync. Oh, that yes, there was fine acting. I don't fault any of the actors or actresses, and I'm sorry they aren't woman actors, they're actresses. Meh. The acting was great, even Officer K, and I keep forgetting the actor's name, but he did a good job for what the part called for. But they had to go and call him Officer K, and I know they were thinking of Kafka. His main character is always called K, just the letter K. But I can't help thinking of Men in Black. And Men in Black was a comedy. And, okay, Ryan Gosling, yes, he played K. Tommy Lee Jones played Agent K in Men in Black. And it was a comedy, and that, I can't help thinking of him, not of Kafka. Now, Franz Kafka wrote these really weird novels. Phil was a big fan of his. Like The Castle, where the guy's walking out in the snow, and then he goes back to the castle and has sex, and then he's walking in the snow again. I lost my place once and never could find it because every chapter is the same, pretty much. Or The Trial, excellent novel by Kafka, in which a man is tried and convicted and never even knows what he's accused of. Oh, yeah. Skin job. I hate the term skin job. The androids in the novel are people. They bleed just like we do. And even though Phil calls them robots in the novel, they're organic. They aren't machines. They're grown in artificial wombs. In the movies, they have parts. They're robots. They're machines. And yet they die. Ridley Scott didn't get it. He didn't even get his own ideas right. Oh, I wouldn't want to be in my 15-year-old self, Sleepy Dave. Yeah, I think I know what movie you're talking about, but I can't think of the title, and I've never actually seen it, only the trailers for it. Yeah. Anyway, it really is time for me to scoot on out of here so I can prepare my computer for watching or Walter Bosley. I forget what he's talking about this week. It's posted on his channel, a list of topics. So let's, yeah, my camera is pixelating. It's time to clear the cache and all that good stuff. So you guys hang in there. I will, oh, really? I can get a list of participants? Huh, okay. Didn't know that. Oh, that's only the people who actually posted in chat. It doesn't include the lurkers. Toggle time stamp, pop out chat. Oh, you learn a lot by clicking on things. I'm always afraid of taking the chance that I'll click on something that crashes the show. Anyway, okay, the cache is cleared. And thank you all for listening. And have a blessed day. Why is it when I say thank, I type snack? Even my typing is dyslexic. Hi, Philip Blair. You're just in time to say good night, but this show will be archived. And you can always listen at your leisure. Ever home? I meant to say everyone. My typos are getting ridiculous. Okay, that'll do it. Let's see. End stream. Catch you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Good night.